Welcome, everyone. Thank you all. Tonight, we're continuing with our study of Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada. Tonight, we will begin chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And as usual, if you have any questions, any comments as we go, then please ask. So we'll start with text number 3. We've heard a summary of the philosophy because the first chapter is called Observing the Armies on the Battlefield. So it's more or less like an introduction to the scene, which is the Bhagavad Gita is one chapter of the Mahabharata. The first chapter, although the Bhagavad Gita is mainly philosophy, the first chapter gives an understanding of the context in which the Bhagavad Gita is spoken, a little bit of a description of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Then in chapter 2, it is called Contents of the Gita Summarized. So in the second chapter, Prabhupada says it's like a synopsis of the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. The second chapter that will be elaborated in the rest of the book. So the second chapter is very important, the many very important verses. Now we'll begin chapter 3. Chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga. Chapter 4 is called Jnana Yoga. Karma, as we all know, karma means action, right? Action, to act. Jnana, which is the title of chapter 4, Jnana Yoga. Jnana means knowledge. So to act with knowledge. And the problem with the modern world is people do not act with transcendental knowledge or divya jnana. And because they don't act with transcendental knowledge, they create karma for themselves. They create reactions, fruitive results for themselves. And they also create sometimes ugra karma or vikarma, which means extremely negative reactions. Sometimes people get very serious reactions from the material, as we see around the world at the moment in so many circumstances. All of this happens, this is called ugra karma, vikarma, because people are not acting with knowledge, and therefore they create karma for themselves. So chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga. Yoga means union, connection, to connect. So to connect with God, to connect with Krishna through our karma, our actions. So that's what the description will be in chapter 3. There are many famous verses in chapter 3. How we should connect with Krishna through our actions in this world. So that's the description given within chapter 3. So now we will hear the description of acting, the beginning of the chapter. Verse number 1. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare? If you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work. So I'll read a little bit. This is from Bhagavad Prabhu's commentary in Surrender Unto Me, which is the study guide, the study guide book for the Bhagavad Gita, which I use and many devotees in ISKCON use. It says, Bhagavad Prabhu writes, In Bhagavad Gita 249, Krishna said, Durena Yavaram Kama Buddhi Yogad Dhananjaya. Keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, Buddhi Yoga. This instruction has confused Arjuna. So that's why Arjuna is asking this question at the beginning of the chapter, because he's confused. Buddhi Yoga is Bhakti Yoga, but it literally means the yoga of Buddhi, intelligence. Taking the meaning of Buddhi as intelligence, Krishna's order would mean that Arjuna, by the use of his intelligence, should avoid all abominable activities. Krishna has even emphasized intelligence by using the word Buddhi 10 times in the final 33 verses of the second chapter. So Krishna uses this phrase again and again, 10 times in the final portion of chapter 3. He says Buddhi Yoga, right? He uses this terminology, Buddhi Yoga. We can thus easily imagine Arjuna concluding that he should renounce fighting and thus keep the abominable activity of killing his kinsmen far distant by Buddhi Yoga, or linking his intelligence to the Supreme. But why then, thinks Arjuna, is Krishna still urging me to fight? Thus Arjuna, in the first 2 verses of chapter 3, asks Krishna to clarify his apparently contradictory instructions. So Krishna is encouraging Arjuna. Fighting is karma. Karma means activity. Fighting is a type of activity. It's action. But then Krishna keeps stressing Buddhi Yoga 10 times. He uses this phrase in the last 33 verses that he's just spoken. So he's saying Buddhi Yoga, use your intelligence. Now we all know ourselves, it's better not to fight. Fighting is always the last resort in any situation. You know, sometimes we get into challenging situations with individuals. Some people are aggressive, but with our intelligence, we try to avoid fighting. So Arjuna is thinking, Krishna is saying, fight, but then he keeps saying, use your intelligence. So usually when there's a fight in front of us, we use our intelligence. How do I get out of this? Fighting is the last resort. So in other words, Arjuna is trying to avoid the battle. Right? He's trying to avoid the battle. When we don't want to do something in Krishna's service, we make excuses. We all have experience of this. We may have done it ourselves, or we see others do it continuously. Oh, I can't do my service. And sometimes devotees make illogical excuses. Oh, I can't do this. I cannot do that. And it's illogical. But still, if we don't want to do something, we'll come out with all sorts of excuses. So Arjuna is incredibly intelligent, and he is making these excuses because he does not want to fight. So now Krishna is going to reply to him and give his opinion. How we can act in this world, we can perform karma, but by connecting it to Krishna, our karma, our activities, our work, with our intelligence, we actually connect to Krishna. It becomes karma yoga. So Prabhupada says in the purport to the first verse, Arjuna wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and question Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. So he's a sincere student. Shishashteham satimam tvam prapanam. Arjuna says in the beginning of the second chapter, in verse 7, he says, now I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So sometimes we get confused. All of us get confused sometimes. What should I do? So in order to answer the question, we have a three-pronged, that's not the right word, but a checking system with 3 points: Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So if we do not know what to do in life, important messages and themes and teachings on a theoretical level and also a practical level in the Bhagavad Gita, if we don't know what to do, we need to approach Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. We approach the spiritual master. In Arjuna's case, he is sitting with his guru on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. What should I do? I don't know what to do. I'm confused. We all get confused sometimes. So we go to our authorities to help us overcome our confusion. We go to our authorities, please instruct me. Please help me to understand how to overcome my confusion. So as a pious devotee, this is Arjuna's qualification. And that's the qualification each devotee needs. He needs to approach his authority. Prabhupada also says in the purport, Krishna has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddha Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. So, Gurujan Prabhu points out the Bhagavad Gita is spoken to the buddhi, to our intelligence, right? It is spoken so our intelligence becomes refined. The reason that we make mistakes in this material world is because our intelligence is not sufficiently purified. And because our intelligence may be weak. This will be answered actually in this chapter, at the end of chapter 3. Prabhupada actually says in the purport that the intelligence is the capital of lust. What is the definition of lust? When you want to do something for the pleasure of your senses, atmindriya priti, when we want to do something to please our own senses, that is called lust. That is the definition of kama. The definition of prema, or love, for Krishna is krishnendriya priti. We want to do activities for the pleasure of Krishna. Atma Krishna indriya priti. Atma indriya priti means we want to serve Krishna. Atma indriya priti means we want to serve our own senses. So the definition of lust is that we want to please our own senses. Now, the reason sometimes devotees fall down and have difficulty in spiritual life is because their intelligence is not strong enough. In other words, they're not hearing and chanting enough about Krishna. or their intelligence may have become weakened. And we all know what it's like when our intelligence is weak. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it discusses that sleep is a function of buddhi, or intelligence. When we sleep, why do we sleep? We sleep for our intelligence, our buddhi. Because sometimes your intelligence needs to rest. And we all know that when we don't get enough sleep, it's hard to control the mind. Our intelligence becomes weak. So when our intelligence is weak, we make negative choices. So we need to feed the intelligence constantly. We need to rest enough so that our intelligence is strong, and we need to feed it with spiritual instruction. Like Krishna has just done in the second chapter of the Gita. He's given Arjuna so much spiritual instruction so that Arjuna can now act with buddhi, or with purified intelligence, strong intelligence. Krishna conscious intelligence, intelligence which is strengthened by Vedic instruction. Prabhupada further says in the purport, without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Very interesting point, because fight, stay on the field, do and fight. Sometimes we or others may walk away from our duty, our service in Krishna's. One time a devotee came to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, I resign. I want to leave my service. I resign. Prabhupada said, how do you resign as Krishna's servant? You can't. It's your constitutional position. Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nichadas. We are eternally Krishna's servant. Therefore, we should not go away from Krishna's service. And sometimes devotees do go away from Krishna's service. Why? Because their intelligence is weak. They're not reading Prabhupada's books enough. And Arjuna is saying to Krishna, fight. Stay here on the battlefield and fight. But Arjuna is indicating to Krishna, well, you just told me to use my intelligence. Fighting is not good. We don't want to kill people unnecessarily. So better I go away from the battlefield, go to the forest and just meditate and practice my spiritual life. However, Prabhupada points out in the purport, you can do that. You can go away. It's called sannyas, or renunciation, tyag. You can go away from society, give up your material responsibilities, and you can focus just on your spiritual life, your sadhana, in a secluded place. However, if you are not sufficiently purified from the modes of passion and ignorance, your mind will deceive you and you will meditate upon women and money, or in the case of women, men and money, or in the case of same-sex couples, the same sex. Whatever it is, it's the same maya. It's the same illusion. It's the same illusion. Right? We're meditating on sense gratification and wealth. Even when we're in a secluded place, we will not become purified. So what Krishna is saying to Arjuna is, do your duty. You're affected by the modes of passion and ignorance, so work in this world to fulfill your duty in Krishna's service. Text number 2. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. So Arjuna is saying to Krishna, I'm confused. Actually, Arjuna is not confused. Sometimes we do this. Sometimes children, I remember doing this when I was young. We would drive home at nighttime, might be a little bit late. And we used to like our parents carrying us inside the house. So we would pretend we were asleep. And I remember my mum or my dad one time, they said, "You're awake, come on, get up and walk." But sometimes we pretend. And sometimes we pretend not to understand an instruction, even though it is crystal clear. Sometimes we might do this. So Arjuna is doing this in this circumstance. He knows what Krishna wants. It's very clear. To get out of doing his service for Krishna. So Prabhupada says in the purport, by his instructions, Arjuna is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all other students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. This is an important point to understand. It's an important point to understand that Arjuna is asking these questions for our benefit. 5,000 years after this conversation took place on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna is asking, Arjuna is saying, why should I fight this battle? Please instruct me, give me. It's actually for our benefit. The Bhagavad Gita is spoken for our benefit. Krishna bewildered Arjuna, placed him into under the influence of Yoga Maya, his internal potency, his internal energy. He covers Arjuna. Why does he cover Arjuna? Why does he cover him? He covers Arjuna so that he can speak the Bhagavad Gita for our benefit. Because actually Arjuna was a pure devotee. He did not need to hear the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna bewildered him just for this singular purpose, so that we could hear the Bhagavad Gita. Now Krishna answers. Text number 3, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. So, Prabhupada says in the purport that of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. And by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So this is an important theme and instruction which Krishna elaborates upon in the Bhagavad Gita that two paths will be discussed. This is one of the themes in the Bhagavad Gita. Two paths will be discussed. One path is the path of inaction. The other path is the path of action. Inaction means we're inactive, right? I'll go away, I'll just meditate, I'll just do sadhana, and I'll purify myself in that way. But as Prabhupada points out beautifully in the purport, the path of activity in Krishna consciousness service is better because it doesn't depend on the senses being purified. In other words, if your mind, your intelligence, your senses are not purified of lust, you will go away to meditate and do sadhana, but you'll think about sense gratification and you'll be unsettled and unable to concentrate. Therefore, right, we should engage in bhakti yoga or devotional service. We should engage in devotional service. We should use our senses in an active way. Right? We have to be active with our senses. So these are two of the themes which are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, the path of inactivity, the path of activity. Which does Krishna favor? The path of activity. Because it's safer. That's why Prabhupada gave us so many services. Prabhupada once said, actually, the goal of Krishna consciousness is just to go to Mayapur and to chant Hare Krishna 24 hours a day. But because we are too much affected by the modes of passion and ignorance, we should engage in devotional service. We should engage in bhakti yoga, devotional service. Right? Because we're not qualified at this point in time. If passion and ignorance are affecting us, we should purify the senses and engage the senses. Use our passion in Krishna's service. Use our ignorance to rest so then we can further serve Krishna. Prabhupada also says in the purport, Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. Both the yogas are interdependent as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment and sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. There's a famous quote by Prabhupada. Right? Philosophy without religion, right, is speculation. So we have to marry the two, philosophy or intelligence, using our intelligence while doing our work for Krishna. That's called karma yoga. That's what the theme of this chapter is. Okay. Text number 4. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So, Prabhupada says in the purport, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord, Buddha Yoga. Even a slight performance of such a principle enables one to overcome great difficulties. So Krishna mentions and Prabhupada elaborates in the purport, Krishna mentions in this verse, not by merely abstaining from work. So you can't just walk away in life. As a devotee of Krishna, you have to do your service. You have to do your duty. You can't just walk away from it, no matter how difficult it gets. Nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. You can say, well, I'm just giving everything up. I'm becoming a sannyasi. I'll go and live in the forest. I'll just chant Hare Krishna. That's fine if you have the adhikar or the qualification to do it. If you don't have the qualification or the adhikar, you cannot advance properly in Krishna consciousness. So, Prabhupada says in the purport, the renounced order of life can be accepted when one has been purified by the discharge of prescribed duties, which are laid down just to purify materialistic men's hearts. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting sannyas. So there's a methodology. On rare occasions, someone will go straight from the brahmachari ashram to the sannyas ashram, like Bhakti True Swami, Govinda Swami, Keshava Maharaj, right? There are different personalities. Radhanath Swami, different personalities go straight from one to the other. Bhakti Rasamrita Swami, because they have the adhikar or the qualification to remain detached and renounced from this world. However, most of us are not on that platform. Therefore, as it's explained here, we have to go through the prescribed method of purification, which is varnashrama. You have to go through the various ashrams. You have to fulfill your material desires, go through the grihastha ashram, go through marriage, and so forth, to gradually purify yourself of your material attachments, and then gradually become more renounced so you can fully surrender to Krishna. So this is the philosophy. This is what we're trying to attain. Prabhupada further says, according to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayana. But Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. Very important point. You cannot take sannyas, you cannot renounce until you have given up your attachments to this world. Otherwise, you'll cause disturbance for yourself and for others. It's an important point to understand. Therefore, Krishna is advising Arjuna not to renounce, but to serve. Number 5. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Very important verse. Generally speaking, none of us can refrain from doing something even for a moment. Most of us can't stop, or actually none of us can stop, right? We can't give up activity, even for a moment, because the nature of the soul is to be active, right? All of us are active now. You're listening. Listening is an activity. You're breathing. Breathing is an activity. Your heart's beating. That's activity, right? Everything that we do, is activity. We're thinking, right? That's activity. So the nature of the soul is we cannot be inactive even for a moment, right? We have to act at all times. So Prabhupada explains in the purport, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it will be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. Krishna says in this verse that those who are affected by the modes of material nature, they can't stop acting. They can't stop doing anything. But they're forced to act helplessly under the influence of the modes of material nature. So for so many people, that's their position, right? We're controlled by the three modes of nature. If you're not acting under the Daivi Prakriti, as Krishna describes later in the Bhagavad Gita, if you're not acting under the Daivi Prakriti or the spiritual energy, you'll act under the Mahamaya. You'll act under the influence of Mahamaya, the energy. So if you won't act according to the spiritual energy, you must act according to the dictates of the three modes of material nature, the material energy. So we have to purify ourselves so that we become able to overcome the influence of the modes of nature. In the purport, Prabhupada further says, it is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to always be active. In contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes. And to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. Right? It's good for us. So we have to learn to act in Krishna's service, because Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Uchate, by engaging in the service of Krishna, then our senses become purified. And with purified senses, we can then serve Krishna directly. Right? So we have to do that gradually. Prabhupada further says in the purport, if one takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions of purification in the Shastra, what does it avail him if he is not Krishna conscious? Even if you struggle, and most devotees struggle in this material world, even if you struggle and sometimes fall down, you break the regulative principles, and sometimes you fall down, you struggle in devotional service, still, even if this is the case, if you're engaged as much as you can, to the best of your ability, in Krishna's service, you gradually become purified. Whereas someone who renounces everything in this world, right, gives up all his material attachments, all of his material desires, just goes to the forest, performs some sort of sadhana. If he is not becoming Krishna conscious, it is shrama eva hi kevalam. It is a useless waste of time. Prabhupada says in the purport further, so the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas or any other purificatory process is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure. So it's another important point. That we may take sannyas, we may see, even sometimes we may see sannyasis struggle, right? In the history of ISKCON, many sannyasis fell down and they struggled. And sometimes devotees get very confused. Why is Maharaj struggling, or is there a difficulty there? We have to understand that even sannyas is a sadhana. A sadhana means it's a practice. It's not perfection. It's sadhana, right? Sadhana means it's a practice. It's not perfection. Right? Even sannyas, right? It's a way of adopting certain regulative principles, certain vows, which will assist you and aid you and help you to become Krishna conscious. In and of itself, it is not the goal. Right? The goal is Gopi Bhatu Padakamalayo Dasa Das Anodasa, to become a pure, unalloyed devotee of Krishna, a pure servant of Krishna. Sannyas helps us to get to that platform. Therefore, it is a sadhana. Okay. Text number 6, many powerful verses in this 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So, very important point. It is called michacha. Michacha means pretension, being a pretender. Externally, you dress like a devotee, or externally, you act like a person in the renounced order of life. But internally, you're meditating on sense gratification. That is not the qualification to become a devotee, to always be meditating on sense gratification. Therefore, we have to gradually purify ourselves. So we give up this tendency to meditate on sense gratification, to become a purified devotee of Krishna. It's explained in this verse, right, that sometimes we become confused as to what is our position. For example, which ashram we should be in. Should we be grihastha or brahmachari, a vanaprastha or sannyasi? Sometimes devotees get confused about these things. That is why we need guru, sadhu, shastra. Right? The guru will say us, you need to get married. Or the guru may say, remain renounced. Because we need someone outside of ourselves who is more advanced in Krishna consciousness to guide us. Otherwise, sometimes we don't really understand the nature of our conditioning. My Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj, used to say, I do not trust any one person's mind or judgment, including my own. We always need to be getting instruction and advice and guidance from others. Otherwise, we can't advance in Krishna consciousness. So we need constantly to be getting advice and instruction and guidance from others. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, for sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order, but if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. So don't be a michacha. If you have a desire for sense gratification, purify that desire in a regulated way. Get married, right? Fulfill your material desires, but do it in a regulated way to purify yourself. Prabhupada says in the purport, there are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such philosophers may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, they are the greatest cheaters. So this verse says, don't be micha, don't pretend. Right? If you're qualified, remain renounced. But if you're not qualified, their knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Prabhupada's being very direct, because Prabhupada saw there were so many false gurus, bogus gurus, pretenders. As devotees, we should not be like that. We should not be a pretender. Text number 7. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So, you're better off to be, Prabhupada mentions this, you're better off to be a sincere grihasta, someone who externally appears to be in married life, entangled in the material world, than a false sannyasi, someone who may be acting like he's renounced, but internally is meditating in sense gratification. You're better situated to be acting in this world, but acting in proper Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says in the purport, the prime swata gati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Krishna. The whole institution of Varna and Ashram is designed to help us reach the goal of life. A householder can also reach the destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life, as prescribed in the business without attachment, and in that way make progress. And then Prabhupada says in the purport, it's another famous quote by Prabhupada, a sincere sweeper in the street is far better than a charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. So better just to be a sincere street sweeper. Better just to be a sincere grihasta. Prabhupada actually said, my Guru Maharaj came to make renounciants, I came to make grihastas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, grihasta ashram is a good position for a devotee in Kali Yuga. It's a safe way to go back to Godhead. The renounced path is the sure way if you're qualified, but the safe way is grihasta ashram. Okay, text number 8. This will be our final verse for tonight. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Prabhupada says in the purport, Varnashram religious duties gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So just do your duty in this world. Be a good grihasta or a good brahmachari, whatever your position is, and work according to your nature and offer the results to Krishna. Work in Krishna's service. Use your talents and abilities in the service of Krishna. This will purify you. One should not be given up work should not be given up capriciously without purification of material desires. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature, or in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. So the goal of Krishna consciousness is to act according to your conditioned nature in the service of Krishna and gradually purify ourselves. So this is the beginning of the chapter of Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. We'll stop there. Are there any questions or comments on anything that we discussed? Okay. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week. We'll continue chapter 3. Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
See you next week.
Osuna.